Hello, and welcome to Please Me. Last week, Eve interviewed Melissa Ushenko, a boudoir photographer who teaches her clients how to use boudoir to explore their own sensuality, express emotions, and fall in love with the beauty that is themselves. I have been snapping photos ever since, and I encourage you to go back and listen. This podcast is intended for mature audiences. Eve is a licensed sexual health physical therapist on a mission to destigmatize conversations about sex. Please sit back and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me. Who's looking for a sexy date? STC.com is the premier ethically non-monogamous dating site that also houses a wealth of information regarding sexuality and sexual health. Join the Please Me Health Collective on STC.com and listen to Eve's free live webinars. Use code 37340 for a free trial membership. Maybe you are in the market for some sexy toys to add some spice to the bedroom. Check out the Organic Lovin' link for the best online store for sex toys, lubes, and more.
So that's a perfect example of how really this energy is spreading all over the world. So definitely listen in when you see her pop up and listen to all the episodes because all of them are amazing. But this one is a really beautiful episode that she talks about creating epic, earth-shattering lovemaking. So who would want to miss learning about that?
I'll have that.
I'll take 2 of those, please.
No.
Of course, I can't just have 1. I want 2.
Yes. 2 is good.
2 is good.
Are you suffering from erectile dysfunction in silence? Are you embarrassed by premature ejaculation? Is it hard to get an erection that is long enough for penetration or that lasts long enough to satisfy your partner and yourself? Just know that you are not alone and that 20% of men suffer from erectile dysfunction in their 20s, and it goes up 10% per decade. So 50% of men in their 50s will have some form of erectile dysfunction. My name is Eve Hall, a licensed physical therapist who treats conditions such as erectile dysfunction and other sexual health conditions. I'm here to tell you that there is a solution to erectile dysfunction, and I offer the gold standard in my practice called Inspire Health Physical Therapy and Wellness. I have a full protocol to get your sexy back, so know that I am here to help. Just know that there is no shame in having any sexual health condition, including erectile dysfunction. If that is you, be sure to reach me on SDC.com and leave me a message there, or reach me on pleaseme.online to listen to my podcasts, or to leave me a message and book an appointment today. Hello, and welcome to Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex by turning the sheets into our classroom. Today, I have the honor to interview Satya Lila, and she has been teaching sacred sexuality for 30 years. She teaches women and couples to feel the ecstasy of sacred sexual connection. And I have to say that we both believe that sex is sacred, and it's a force that energizes you and enlivens you. And in my opinion, brings you joy, happiness, and fulfillment. And I want to, first of all, welcome you to the show, Satya. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, I'm really thrilled to be here. Thank you. You do a great work with this podcast. I'm glad to be a part of it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I want to just jump right in and ask you what the difference between sacred sexuality is and regular sexuality.
There's a couple of things. One is the attitude that sex is a sacred act, that it can bring you into not only a deeper connection with your partner or with yourself, but a connection with the divine. That it's a powerful energy that moves through our bodies, and that energy opens up our inner connection with spirit, with source, with the divine, whatever you want to call that thing that is bigger than we are. And so that attitude kind of permeates all the techniques and different things that you can learn. Um, and that there are techniques of breathing and movement that help you slow down and fill your whole body with pleasure. That's a big difference. Most Western sex is fairly genitally focused, and there's an agenda. First you do this, first you have a little bit of foreplay, and then you do maybe have some oral sex, and then you have intercourse, and then you have an orgasm, and there's a path and a kind of an agenda that goes with that path. And sacred sex is very different. It's very non-goal oriented. It's very much being in the moment. It's like using touch as a meditation to be present in the moment and feeling that touch deeply and letting just the slightest, simplest touch, maybe a touch on your neck or something like that, ripple through your whole body, your whole energy body. And when you do that, it takes you to higher and higher levels of pleasure. And it opens up levels of pleasure that you might never get to in that kind of rush to the end Western sex model. So that's a little start. We'll get more. You'll hear more as we go in our conversation, but don't want to talk too long at once.
That's okay. I'm soaking it all in, and I absolutely agree that the whole body is an erogenous zone. It's not just your
Mhm.
genitalia, and that shouldn't only be the focus of what you're doing, whether you're
Yeah.
having sacred sexuality sex or regular sexuality sex. It should really be trying to get all of those sensory nerves to wake up in your body. And focusing just on the genitalia is you're going to miss a lot of potential there. How can we build a relationship with our true erotic selves?
First, let me just say the true erotic self is really accessed very easily through sacred sexuality. And the most simple way to start with that is using the breath. Breath and relaxation are two really key elements. The breath helps your body to relax, and energy follows breath. There, in sacred sexuality, we work with energy a lot, and as well as just physical sensations. There are energy pathways that move through the body, and the more they are awakened, the more the whole body gets involved in the arousal and pleasure. And breath helps the energy to move. And relaxation also helps the energy to move because when your muscles are tight, it the energy can't move through those muscles. It keeps it all localized, and it builds it up really fast. It's usually localized in the genitals. And the muscles in particular that you pay attention to are the belly and the butt and the legs. And if they're all tight, that energy that's building up in the genitals doesn't have any place to go. It can't spread out. So it builds up really fast and then it pops into an orgasm. But the orgasm can often feel disappointing. Wow, I thought was going to be more than that. No, where's the chills and thrills? What happened? And
Yeah, sometimes it comes and goes too quickly, right? Or
yes,
comes, but
yes.
then it's elusive and it gets lost.
Uh-huh. Yes, yes. And that's what's called a peak orgasm because the
Okay. So,
energy builds up and it peaks and then it drops down and you're done. There's also such a thing as a valley orgasm where the
I want
energy builds up and hills and valleys
okay.
goes higher and higher. And you can be in orgasmic energy all this way through this. And this is true for men as well as for women. I've seen plenty of men be in this kind of valley orgasmic energy for a half an hour at a time, which is really different and usually only the territory of women to be able to do that kind of thing. And not all women can do it, but the relaxation and the breathing, and there are movement practices, and you can get really complicated with it if you want to. But the simplest way to work towards that is to keep breathing and keep your body relaxed. And one other thing I'll add is if you are keeping your body relaxed, the energy won't build up as quickly, and you might feel like lost a little bit at first because you may not be used to the slow build. So just be patient and let yourself not feel as much at first, because when you do that, you're going to be able to feel so much more by the time you fill your whole body up with pleasure. It's like you can picture your body as a big balloon and you're pumping pleasure energy into it. And if you're just pumping it into your genitals, it you feel it pretty quickly because it's only this much before it's reached its max. But if it's this much, it takes a long time to fill up all the body with the air in the balloon. The balloon's way bigger, so it just takes longer for it to happen. So just be patient with that, and you'll be happy that you were.
Absolutely. And after you described it to me, I have had instances where I've had valley orgasms and I didn't really know if they were orgasms or not because it almost felt like
Mhm.
the entire session was an
Yeah.
orgasm. And I often get asked by my partner, so did you get there or not? Because obviously he
Mhm.
like tease me and thank goodness.
Yeah.
And when I have a peak orgasm, it's humongous, loud, it's gigantic, right? So
Yeah.
comparing one to the other is so different. And the valley orgasm feels like you're orgasming forever. It's just like
Mhm.
amazing sensation on and on. And you're
Yeah.
like, am I ever going to reach a peak or not? But it doesn't matter because it all feels so wonderful.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess I have had valley orgasms and I really never realized it. I always,
Uh-huh.
there's so many different descriptions of orgasms. They talk about like nipple orgasms now and this and that. And
Yeah.
it's like there's so many different types, but I feel like
Mhm.
they are all connected to the
Yeah.
clitoris. Would you agree?
No, not really. Yeah, actually, I'll take that back. So I think because the clitoris is such a big organ, there's the external clitoris, but there's all the internal nerve endings,
Mhm.
and it is all connected there. But at the same time, I can be orgasmic just from breathing without any touch at all on my genitals. I can be orgasmic just from moving my energy and breathing. I can be orgasmic from my partner kissing my neck or kissing my back, or there's a way of it's like the universe is made up of orgasmic energy, and when you learn to tap into it, you can be orgasmic. The clitoris is certainly a major component, but
Yes.
when you really tapped into that energy that is all around us, you can be orgasmic from.
That's hashtag goals for me because I can't be orgasmic just from breathing. I would love to learn how to do that because every once in a while, when I'm stressed out or feeling anxious, it would be really nice to have that tool in my pocket to be able to pull it out and slow myself down, connect with my feminine energy, and feel good.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really that's so true. It's really helps moving through this world to be tapped into that energy, because everything flows in a giant flow, and orgasmic energy is really aligned with that flow. And when you're aligned with the flow, everything works so much more freely and easily. Synchronicities happen, things fall into your lap. It just makes everything so much easier.
Absolutely. Oh my goodness. I have a lot to learn from you. Tell me what sexual energetics is. And I think that's what you're basically talking about is the movement of the energy.
Yeah.
And think about everything is interconnected in your body. Your brain connects to the entire body. It connects all of the sensory nerves in your body and it connects to your clitoris. And the studies that have been done on orgasms show that the clitoris lights up whether you're having direct stimulation on it or not. That's why I said that before.
Uh-huh.
But
Uh-huh.
I love for a study to be done, researchers out there that are listening, to see what the brain looks like when you're having a peak orgasm and what the brain looks like when you're having a valley orgasm. That would be really interesting.
It would.
Mhm.
Yes, it really would.
Are you in menopause, perimenopause, or postmenopause? I have found the absolute best products called Parlor Games. I use the estriol and progesterone topical creams, and they have been game changers. Maybe you've listened to the show and want to be featured as a guest. Eve uses Podmatch to connect with new or potential guests. Reach out and begin the process today. So, talk to us about sexual energetics.
Okay. There are energy pathways that run all over the body. The acupuncture meridians are one example of that. There's a main energy pathway up the spine, and there's energy centers located along the spine called chakras. And working with those energy pathways is the basis of sexual energetics. It's working with sexual energy. You can direct that energy and manipulate it in a way to have different effects depending on what you want. Like for instance, if your heart feels closed and shut down, one thing you can do is pleasure yourself and then breathe energy up to your heart and imagine your heart expanding open and love pouring out. So that would be a simple example of sexual energetics, using the energy of sexuality to do remedial type work on the different chakras have different energy, different characteristics. Like the solar plexus is about your power in the world, so you could direct your energy there, or you could direct your energy to the third eye, which is about visioning and creative visualization, intuition. So there's a large number of things you could do just with that one kind of technique. And there's also ways of working with energetics between two people. So,
Yeah.
like, so that the energy flows from one person to another, and you can work with that deliberately and create stronger attraction between two people. There's some techniques you can do to negate the getting bored with your partner things. And some of that can be energetics. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. It's a very big, complicated field, but that's what describes it for the moment.
Yes. And to me, putting it in my own words, it's almost like your own personal body's maintenance program, or, where feeling closed in it somewhere, you can direct the energy to wherever that is to really open that up. So I love the concept of using your own energy to really heal, open, and create connections, even just within yourself.
Yeah.
That's so beautiful. I know we chatted about this a little bit on the phone, but I definitely want to cover this because I think it's really important. The difference between what Tantra is and what sacred sexuality is.
Okay. Yes, I think that is really important. There's sacred sexuality can include tantra,
Mhm.
and there's many different cultures that have a form of sacred sexuality. The Cherokee Indians have a form that's called Kwadoshka,
Oh, I didn't
the
know that.
Taoist. Yeah, it's the only one I'm aware of in the western half of the world. There's Taoist tantra. There's Hindu tantra. Tantra big is bigger than just sexuality.
Right.
There's a lot of tantric practices that have nothing to do with sexuality, and so they overlap a little bit, but they each have their own individual characteristics. And when I first started teaching 30 years ago, I called what I was doing tantra, and I called it Western tantra
Okay.
because that's what people were calling it then. And it was some of the tantric sexual techniques blended with modern Western psychotherapeutic practices for healing, and just a mishmash of stuff that from eclectic traditions. And as consciousness has been raised in the last few years about cultural appropriation, I decided to stop calling my work Tantra because it's not pure Tantra. There's a flavor of Tantra in it, but I think sacred sexuality really is a better term for it. It's a better descriptor for what I am presenting to the world, because I do draw in more healing practices and more Western dancing and things like that. And I want to honor the cultures that developed Tantra, and not just be another white lady taking over something that has been there for thousands of years in their culture.
I really do appreciate that sensitivity to culture.
Mm.
Just in my own tiny little world example, and this has nothing to do with sexuality, it has to do with dance, which you just actually brought up. There's a huge Latin dance community that dances salsa and bachata and all of those sexy Latin dances, right? And I am a Latina, and I grew up dancing those dances, and it was part of my culture. But I didn't go to a dance studio to learn all of the ballroom dance moves that have been created. And a person that was not in my culture once said that their country's salsa was like the best in the world. And I was offended. I was like, what are you talking about? This is not even your culture. And you're
Mhm.
taking my dance and trying to say that your country does it better. And how could you say that? It wasn't
Yeah.
created you. So this is just like one tiny example, but I really appreciate that you're sensitive to that, because what tantra does, it's a very ancient practice, and it has changed in so many ways. What you're doing in the Western world is going to be different, because culturally we think differently. We're
Mhm.
it's a different culture. So I think it's super important to be very sensitive about that. So I very much appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I would love to hear a story or two about some clients that you've helped to connect with their sacred sexuality. And if you could give us an example, possibly of a single person, male or female, and a couple, that would be really wonderful.
Okay. Let's see. I'll start with the single person. There was a woman that I worked with over the course of a couple of years, both in private sessions and in groups. And when she first came to see me, she was really shut down, very contained energy. She dressed very plainly. Her posture was hunched over, and she was didn't want any attention. She was very nervous of having attention placed on her. And during the course of the time that I worked with her, I watched her start to open up and blossom. And she went from wearing things like plaid flannel shirts and jeans to all these flowy feminine clothing that's colorful, and flowers and a flower behind her ear. And she softened. Her face changed. Her face got softer and happier looking. I was teaching her the breath practices. She was single at the time. I think she was divorced, but she had been divorced for a while. Anyway, she was single at the time. So she was doing solo practices. And she was working with being bigger, being more expressive with her energy. And the breathing practices would help her get her energy up. And then I'd ask her to stand up and be seen. And if she was in a group, then she would get feedback from the other people about how beautiful she was. If I was with her, if it was a private session, I might say something, but I would support her in going through her fears of being seen. And she opened up so much. She started having a lot of fun. And towards the end of the time that we were working together, she actually met a man, and they eventually got married, actually pretty quickly. And that was 20 years ago, and they're still married. And I run
Wow.
into her every once in a while. And she always says, I would never be where I am today if it wasn't for you and the work that we did. And And even saying that, I just get a little bit of tears in my eyes.
Sure.
She thanks me every single time I see her. She said, I wouldn't have been able to meet him sexually. I wouldn't have been able to have the connection that we have if it wasn't for the work that we did. And it's just, I'm so happy for her. It's people like that that make me continue doing this work year after year, is because it's so incredibly beautiful.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. So incredibly rewarding. And it sounds like she was very much in touch with her masculine energy and with your help was able to really hone in on her femininity and bring that out into the world. And sometimes people are afraid to show that feminine energy for fear of so many things, right? We can finish that sentence in a lot of different ways because fear shuts us down in a lot of ways. And so opening up to your femininity and not being afraid of it and being able to hone it is really, I think, part of what you do, wouldn't you say?
yeah, yeah. And I do also want to say that feminine energy doesn't have to mean wearing pretty clothes and putting a flower behind your ear.
I
That
agree.
was her expression. There's many expressions of femininity, and I don't try to make people conform to any one standard of what I think feminine should be. For her, that was what she wanted to develop. It was
And she was
it
connecting with her authenticity, whatever that was for her.
yes. It took her a little while to embrace it because it was scary at first. She had grown up in a environment where it was not safe to have attention. She had some older brothers who were bullying her, and she didn't want male attention, and she had to learn that it was safe to do that. And that was the biggest deal, is finding the safety in that expressiveness. It's okay to be seen.
Yes. And I so appreciate that you're saying that because for me, and I know for a lot of women that have a history of sexual abuse or rape or anything like that, male attention or attention, that sort of attention can be very scary.
Yes.
And I remember my younger self in my late teens and 20s getting dressed up because I've always enjoyed getting dressed up for myself and
Mhm.
going out into the world and attracting attention that I didn't want. I didn't
Mhm.
want people whistling at me or whatever because it felt abusive. And that sort of fear can really make you close off to wanting to be seen. So I can
Mhm.
relate to this client of yours.
Yeah.
So how about for a couple? What couple? She became a couple,
Yes.
but give me an example of a couple that you worked with.
Okay. I worked with this couple who they were really fun to work with. They were older than most of the people that I was working with at the time. They're probably in their 60s, I would say. And had been married for a while, over 15 years. I'm not sure exactly how long, but they were innocents when around sexuality. He hadn't had very many partners, and she wasn't all that tuned into her sexual energy. And they came to a group first to check it out. And then later they did some private work with me as well. There wasn't anything wrong with their relationship. They loved each other. They just wanted to have a better sexual connection. And I love working with people like that because we live in a culture where you're supposed to magically know how to please another person, but nobody ever teaches you. We're so sadly missing in sex education that's really sexual education, not just don't get pregnant and don't get STDs. That's all that's all the kids get, and we didn't even get that when I was growing up. And somehow you're magically supposed to know how to please your partner when everybody is different, and it's just a mess. And I have a gift for talking about sex in a way that is matter of fact and normalizing that people just relax around it. And I taught them a lot about just the basic techniques of how to touch, how to give pleasure, how to touch pleasurably, how to touch with energy through moving through your hands so that it feels flowing and congruent. The differences between men and women and our response, our patterns, like men liking genital touch way before women do, and those kind of differences like that. There's a lot of teachings about that that come from Tantra. And to tease and create anticipation and how to give oral sex, techniques of oral sex, how to receive it and love it. I've taught a lot of women how to really love giving a blowjob, which a lot of women do it because it's expected and they don't really like it all that much. But there's ways of working with it that make it's one of my favorite things to do. It's really yum. The Sanskrit word for penis is lingam, and its
Yes.
literal translation is wand of light. So
Okay.
if the man can learn to channel light through his lingam, then you can drink light from his lingam and it lights up your whole head. It's quite amazing.
Talking about actually swallowing semen, or you're just talking about the
I'm talking about energetically.
okay, huh?
I'm talking about energetically imagining that light is coming through.
Okay.
The man is channeling the light in it from source energy through his crown, down his spine, out his lingam, into your mouth. And
Okay.
it could be physical semen too.
It can be physical too. Okay.
It could be, but it doesn't have to be. It's really the energetics of it. It makes it quite yummy.
Yes, and I too enjoy that. But I have to say that I do not enjoy the taste of sperm or semen. That's the word.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't like the taste of it. And so that's not something that I ever enjoy, but I do enjoy pleasuring that way. And
Mhm.
I absolutely love receiving. And I know that a lot of women feel very much, maybe they're like nervous because maybe they think that they don't smell good or and that's to me is like, you have to appreciate your body and all of its natural fluids.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
part of it is, like you said, yummy, delicious, and all of that. I could see that working with women to help have them feel more comfortable in that way would help them to receive, because I do know people that just don't like to allow people to do that to them because of whatever reason. You
Yeah, that's sad too because it's so
know,
great.
I know. How could you live without it?
I know, I couldn't.
That's one thing that I really can't.
Yeah, me too. Me too. It's really essential in my whole response process. It's really a crucial element for me.
Yes, and I often talk about women getting a hard on, right? Too,
Mhm.
because they also need to get engorged, and our clitoris is about the size of the penis. It's just more internal than external, so you don't see the
Mhm.
whole, but it does need to get filled with blood in order to be able to receive without pain and being able
Mhm.
to accept that pleasure. And so that's really important to note here too.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's easy for that process to get rushed because men have such a, especially in a heterosexual connection, men have such a faster response that if we go by their response, then we're probably rushed. And
Men take 5 to 7 minutes to reach orgasm, right? If you're talking about coupled penetrative sex, where a woman takes 25 minutes or more. So there's such a big gap. What's called the orgasm gap, which is why women have less orgasms than men do in heterosexual relationships. And so teaching these techniques is so important for couples to be able to have that orgasm gap closed for each person.
yeah, and there's techniques that come from Tantra to delay ejaculation,
Yes.
and that men can, once they master it, they can have orgasms without ejaculating, ejaculation is what stops all the fun. Orgasm, you can have extended orgasms and not ejaculate and be in orgasmic energy for half an hour or so and stay there with your partner. There's a lot of ways of minimizing that gap, and that's a really important one for a man to learn, to delay ejaculation.
Absolutely. I agree. And we've talked about that quite a lot on different podcasts. So we won't get into those techniques now. But I do want to know what tools you bring into the bedroom yourself.
I think the biggest tool I bring in is my awareness and sensitivity to energy. I can feel when my body is waking up. I can feel what parts of my body still aren't awake. And I have the communication skills to ask my partner to, hey, would you kiss my spine? Because I want it to wake up more. And do it in a way that is affirming to him, not saying you've done something bad, but to say, I want to make this as good as possible. And I want to go as deep into the pleasure as possible with you. And I know we can do this. And right now, I'd like my back to be woken up a little bit more. Will you kiss up and down my spine? Or something like that. Who would say no to that?
Exactly. And putting it in words that are not critical, right?
Yes.
Are communicating your needs is so important to getting your needs met. And I love the specificity of what you're saying, because sometimes we can say something that's too vague and they don't understand. And you are really
Yeah.
giving them absolute direction as to what is going to get you turned on even more and get that energy flowing and you opening up for
Mhm.
beautiful things. So I appreciate that you said that as well. So I want
Good.
to make sure my listeners can find you. So can we let them know where they can find you?
Yes, the best place is to look at my Linktree page, and there it is. And you'll find on there a link to my website. You'll find a link to, I offer a free sexual communion gateway session, which is if you're interested in doing more private work, it tells you more about that and gives you a link to sign up. And there's a few other free gifts that there are links to on that link tree, guided meditations and a thing I wrote about a connection ceremony that couples can do with each other. Look there for lots of goodies, and I'd love to see you if I could serve you.
Absolutely. Lots and lots of freebies there. So go on that website and check it out, because she is a wealth of information and she's giving you her knowledge in a lot of ways for free. So take advantage of that, because you can learn a lot and hopefully open up all of those energy channels for yourself. So that's wonderful. Thank you. Satya, it has been such an amazing conversation with you.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. And it was really fun talking with you.
Thank you so much. Until next time.
Looking for the best live streaming or podcast recording site? Look no further than StreamYard. Get $10 off your first purchase. For podcast hosting, Buzzsprout is the absolute best option out there. Get $20 off your first purchase. Feel free to call me on the OWL app. Use code EH576472 for $10 free to use on the best networking app around. Give me a call. See all links and info in the show notes.